Hi, my name is Jessica Crow. I am the founder of Apogee and the host of Change Leader Insights. And I am so excited because today I have here with me Jen Coken. She is a best-selling author. She's a speaker. She's an executive coach. And we're here to talk about the inner game of leadership with a special focus on women in the workplace, how we need to own our authority and really show up in a way that allows us to really recognize our leadership potential. And Jen has, I'm going to look over here, a recently published book called Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower. She has a program called the Executive Presence Accelerator Program and a workshop called Unignorable. And I can't wait to just talk through all of this. But before we get into all of the things, Jen, tell us a little bit more, I should say, about who you are and how you got to where you are today, your origin story, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. Thank you. And first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this. I think we talked about this months ago. So it's been months in the making and very, very excited to be here. I was in politics for a long time. That's where I cut my teeth, working on Capitol Hill, getting people elected at every level, being a grassroots organizer. And through that journey, I was working in an industry in politics, which was mostly men. Mm-hmm. I was then working in the energy industry, again, predominantly men. And, look, I love guys. I just didn't want to become one. And I found myself becoming one. You know what I mean? Like, this is the way you do it. You got to get stuff done. Because in the political world, you have a campaign, you have a deadline, you have a date. But my whole life was like that. And I became this very results-oriented, good. You want to win campaigns if you can.
Right.
A results producer. That's what I was known as, but also freaking burnt out because it was like I was exiling parts of myself, my femininity, my spirituality, my intuition, my desire to collaborate, my desire to be intradependent, my desire to honestly, this may sound a little soft or woo for people, to lead from love instead of that. Yeah, that's what was so important to me. And at the same time I was doing that, I was coaching for a big international personal growth and development company. All that came to a halt in 2016 for two reasons. One, I realized what I had been doing, and even that personal growth and development company was very male oriented and directive. I mean, that's literally the traditional energy, I would say, of kind of a male-oriented workforce, because it comes from the military and industry where you have to give direction. And even if we look at emergency services type of personnel, right? Number one, I stopped leading for that company because I just wanted to begin exploring so many other modalities, and you can't when you are a leader there. You don't want to get things mixed up. That's A. B, the company I was working for that I thought for sure I was going to retire from because I loved working there, reorganized, and me and half my team were out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Big surprise. And it just so happened the next day, my first book came out. And it got me thinking, okay, well, maybe there's something bigger here for me. And I spent about 6 months. That book was all around ovarian cancer, which my mom died of.
I'm sorry.
Things. I felt like my mission was to educate women about their bodies, because there's no cure, there's no tests, there's no way to decipher it unless we're vigilant.
Wow.
And I did that, for 6 months, got that book to bestseller, TV, radio, the whole bit.
Wow.
But it was like I was living my grief again and again and again. And I couldn't take it. And one of my coaches at the time said, you got to start making money, right? Because my severance was running out.
Right.
So I went back to what I knew, which was coaching, and eventually began to identify how I had exiled those parts of myself and began to talk with more and more women leaders about them feeling the same way in their current position.
Yeah.
And also began just thinking about traditional roles and how we're raised as women to caretake everybody else. And it's hard to break free. Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes, and you're in the office and you want to take care of everybody and you want to make sure everyone's okay. And that can lead to not giving direct feedback, not giving feedback at all, not tackling the hard things. So my business became about empowering women to lead like themselves instead of code switching and contorting and downplaying their accomplishments to feel accepted.
Right.
So that's the very broad picture of how I got to be who I am today, Tess.
It's a wonderful story. And what I think I appreciate most is that you followed these pings and threads, and then you had self-awareness of, okay, this was right for right then, and now I need to honor what I need for myself and go follow that thread or ping.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is scary and takes a lot of courage. And I love that you did that, because it is, to your point, in the workplace, women do often play a role, or we feel like we have to conform to a certain way of working, being, and collaborating that is not necessarily leading from that place of love. Like you mentioned that, and that resonated very much from having been in corporate roles and in consulting roles, and just noticing that there's, sometimes that's lacking. We might say it might be even core values on a company's wall, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're leading and loving in that way. And I think there's a really big opportunity for women in particular to lead that charge, so to speak. And I love that you are carrying that torch for people and helping them see how to do that. So let's talk a little bit about that and unpack it. I know you've got your workshop and your book and your coaching program, but what are some of the ways that women in particular can show up as their authentic selves or lead the way that they feel aligned with, following their intuition and following some of the strategies that you have seen work for yourself and others?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I label what you just described, leading like yourself, leading authentically, as authority. And when I was writing my book and thinking about the framework from the book, I always talk about, I want to help women lead with authority, influence, and impact. And I began to unpack that. And I really think there's 4 types of leaders. There's the authentic leader. And what I mean by that, if you look at the root word of authenticity, you look AUTH, you look at the root word of authority, it's the same. And it's actually an ancient word from Greek that means self. So instead of looking at authority as a power play, what I say is, when you are true to yourself, and that there's no easy way to get there. I'll just say that you have to be willing to do the work. Now, it's not hard either, but it is taking time to reflect and really feel what feels true for you when you're leading. I knew the times that I was strident, the times when I was told, go fire that person. And I'm like,
why?
I can't, because they're on medical leave and that will be a lawsuit. I should have stood up I knew it was off, but I didn't have enough solid footing to feel like I could speak my truth. So I think the number one strategy is making sure we continually, because it's not a one and done, as we both know, taking time to reflect on what is authentic for me. If you Google authentic leadership, or I'm sure if you ask the chat bot, whatever bot you're using, I know if I Google it, 33 million hits on how to be an authentic leader. What does that tell you?
People want to know how to be an authentic leader. They're curious.
And nobody knows. And nobody knows. People want to know, and they're looking outside themselves to figure it out. Wrong direction, people. Look inward.
Right.
And look inward. And I really look at this from a somatic perspective, an embodiment of leadership perspective. Think about those moments when you are leading, and it doesn't have to be at work. It can be among your family, your group of friends. Maybe you're involved with your church or theater or something like that. What are the moments that feel true to you, where your heart feels happy, where your body is relaxed? That's your authentic self. And can you then name adjectives that would describe yourself when you are embodying what authentic leadership means to you? The key is checking in with your body and embodying that.
Yeah.
When we're leading and direct, like the antithesis of that, when we're leading in direct violation of authentic leadership, you will notice you're tense. You will notice you're tensing shoulders, thighs, your sphincter. Can I say that?
You can.
Your sphincter. Seriously, like you're kind of, almost like you're trying to do a Kegel, but you're not really, because you're on edge. But seriously, I'm not kidding. Check in with your body, because those are the moments you're not being true to yourself. And then it's an ongoing discovery. Okay, well, it feels like when I'm being true to myself, I'm coming from kindness. Okay. How do I then apply that when I need to have a direct conversation with somebody, that their behavior at work, their behavior around the contract, it isn't working for the team, or somebody, those people that impact the team and nobody is willing to say the thing.
Right.
I'm working with a group right now where finally had to put somebody on a performance improvement plan. Why? Because this person used to be under the CEO, used to be under the new CEO, and then was passed to somebody who's an assistant CEO or like a VP, and she's now stuck dealing with that fallout. And it is coming as a total shock to the employee because no one was willing to say the thing because everybody wanted to be kind. You're not being kind if you're withholding truth. Kindness is clarity.
Yes, it
and
is.
Clarity comes from doing that introspection, which I feel like, man, I got to do that all the time. I got to check myself before I wreck myself,
I like that. I mean, so kindness is, I agree with you. Kindness is clarity. I see this not only in the workplace, but maybe in, bigger forums, right? World forums, where saying the thing to the person who is maybe a high performer, but they're creating chaos around them and toxic environment and kind of bringing down, others they're letting the bridges they burn light the way, right? Like they are challenging, but they're also really top talent in many ways. I've seen that so many times in organizations, and it can be hard for leaders, for peers to be kind and say that thing because they fear fallout, they fear retribution, they fear something that it's unpopular to potentially say that. How do you navigate that aspect of kindness or not being kind in that way? How have you coached people through that?
It varies, but I would say there's a couple of, I would be asking I'd be asking a bunch of questions. One, is there someone who's a friend, who's a peer that they respect that could say it and kind of do a sidebar, look, I got to take you aside. I think the other piece is looking at, okay, that person might be a great sales leader, a great contributor. What's the cost? And if they're a sales leader, what's the revenue they're generating? Because and they may be managing other people, because we know people get promoted to manager when they're results producers and they have no idea
None.
how to train people to do what they do because it's innate with them. And so you've got to train and develop that person, and that person has to be interested in teaching others what that framework is. And that takes a lot of work. So I would look at what's the revenue this person is bringing in. And can you replace that by literally replacing them? Because often what I have seen is the impact on the culture from that person has people leaving, has people not performing at their peak. And that's a bigger cost and definitely an opportunity cost. And then the cost to the company to replace that person, which is 30% of the new projected salary, plus the intellectual property that's gone.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's really just, you got to suss out the cost overall to the company.
And the trade-offs. Absolutely. Yeah,
exactly. And the trade-offs. And then you got to have the person who's willing to say the thing. I was always that person, not always kind. Let me tell you, one of my phrases back in the day, so bad. If you can't hack it, get your jacket.
How did that work for you?
In some instances, really well, because I would say, I got 10 people behind you who want this job. Get out. Like, get out of the way or get out. I mean, this is like high intensity campaigns.
On the campaign trail, I was wondering.
That is how it works. However, I could also say to this person, look, it isn't a fit. And that's what I had told to my client about this person. She just put on a PIP. They're a high performer. They're not a culture fit.
Right.
Hands down, they're not a culture fit. They're not a team player. They're not communicative. And this is a fast-moving organization that needs constant communication. You just don't fit with the culture. I'm sorry.
And that, I love, also, if you can't hack it, get your jacket. That's hilarious. But
don't use it though, because I don't think it's a good idea.
Nobody use that right now.
Nobody use that phrase unless you're playing.
Yeah. But I appreciate, the like how you would approach this. It's hard. It's hard to give feedback regardless. It's hard to give feedback to what are sometimes the untouchables, right? And I love that you've, find a peer, find someone that can provide that feedback or give them training and development. I mean, there's ways to approach it. It's just kind of that first step towards having that critical conversation. What are others? So, thinking about all of this in the context of change and how all leaders are going to have to lead their teams through change, lead projects that create change and probably disruption. What are other ways that women, embodied women who are leading from that authentic place, right? You were describing the root of authentic leadership being self. And maybe actually, were there other aspects of, you mentioned 4 tenets. I think I might have cut you off with the first one because I was letting
no. We just went down a rabbit hole. It's good. Yeah. So I look at leadership 4 types, right? And the inner game of leadership is all about building your inner authority. It is, and that's authenticity. That is feeling like you have a taproot sunk so far into the ground that you're no longer evaluating what's being said about you, whether it's by others or how society is. You're no longer evaluating yourself against outside forces. You're only ever evaluating yourself against your internal compass. Mm-hmm. So your integrity is yours. I'm not talking about morality. I'm not talking about breaking the law, any of those kinds of things, but how you operate is according to you. And you have so much confidence. People are always going to talk about us. I tell people, what people say about you is none of your business. Absolutely. It literally is none of your business. What you say about you, make that your business. That's what's really important. The second piece is once we've worked on that inner game and you have that confidence, now your attention can be focused on your team. Because prior to that, you're probably CYA. Mm-hmm. You're probably worried about how things are going to look. And if you are managing your team, it's to make yourself look good. When we have confidence in who we are and we're being authentic to us, the focus is no longer on us. Now, as a manager, your job is to manage. Mm-hmm. I've had to say that to people. That's your job as a manager, right? So by the way, that high performer who has an impact on the culture, I would probably pull that person aside and go, look, you're a great results producer. Now that you're in a management position, we've got to give you some management training. And we haven't done that because we need to see results from your team. You're now no longer going to be assessed based on your personal results. Mm-hmm. You're going to be assessed based on your team's results. Well, that's not fair. I carry the team, blah, 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 except that's your role. If you don't want the role, fine. We can put you back to being an individual contributor. We can put you back to being a sales team lead. We can't have you in management. So if you want the title, right? If you want the accolades, if you want the salary, this is what you have to go down. When you're focused on your team, the way that I look at this is it's the inspirational leader. For me, that's the same thing as influence. Often, just like authority is seen as power, influence is too. That actually came about during the machine age because one piece of machinery has influence over another, right? And probably it came about from physics, but I am not a physicist and I will not get into that. I began researching what the word influence meant and where it came from. And the 13th century, I went back to the 1200s.
Yeah, you went back in time. Yeah.
I went back in time, influer, which is a French word, which was all about, back then it was about planetary involvement and like the impact of energy flowing to people. And I thought, okay, the highest functioning teams I've ever seen is where it's a symbiotic relationship where, yes, the leader's leading, but there's other people on the team leading and the team's flowing energy and power into the leader and vice versa. And that's the second piece. That's the outer game of leadership. How do I, now I'm confident, come from a perspective of breathing life into my team, of giving them energy? That's the inspirational leader. When those two things, when you're operating on all 10 cylinders on both those areas, then you can make the impact you came to make, whether that's a mentorship program, whether that's a community program, whether that's shifting corporate culture so it becomes the norm, let's say, to take a half-hour lunch.
Right. I know.
Or it becomes the norm to actually log off your computer at 6 and not be expected to log back on after the kids go to bed.
Right.
Or after you've had dinner with your partner, or after you've taken a break, right? So those are 3, but notice there's one that's missing because this is where imposter syndrome comes in. All these things are on a continuum. I can feel confident and feel like I have authority when I'm managing my team one-on-one. But I walk into the leadership team or I walk into any space where someone else in authority is with me. I'm like deer in headlights.
That resonates. I've been there.
Yeah. And so that's where imposter syndrome comes in because imposter syndrome, you can feel like an imposter any time of any day, any place, any situation. Let's just say managing, feeling like an imposter and getting to the source of that to put yourself back into feeling like you have authority, feeling like you're authentic, putting yourself back into focusing on your team. That's kind of something you're going to be managing and dealing with 24/7 for the rest of your life, as far as I can tell, because circumstances change and new people come in and your life circumstances change and et cetera. So the 4 types are authentic leader, influential leader, legacy leader, and then what I would call a hidden leader. The moments where your hand gets slapped in a meeting and you're like, do that again. Or, you try to give feedback to a team member. I'll never forget this. I was in a meeting with the team, working through some things, and one of the guys on the team flat out bellowed at me, yelled at me in the meeting.
What did he say? Do you remember?
I don't even remember. I probably blocked it out. This is like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I went, number 1, we're going to talk about this when the meeting's over. Number 2, don't ever speak that way to me again. You speak with respect. And if you can't, I'm going to ask you to leave and go take a walk till you can settle in. Would you like to leave the room now?
Good.
And he was like, no. Oh, good. And then afterwards, we had a conversation. He had a temper. I mean, he had anger management issues.
Clearly.
It was everybody, because what happens when you're leading that meeting is everybody's eyes get big and they're looking at you to do something about it. And if you shrink, you've lost everybody, not just that guy. You've lost respect from everybody. Yeah.
I mean, that's, thankfully I haven't had a situation where I've had somebody scream at me in a meeting, but I think that would be hard. There were similar, barbs that felt maybe as potent that were happening behind the scenes, right? I think there's in the workplace, you might have that hidden leader experience in front of people, but then even, you actually said it really well. Don't worry about what people are saying. Like, right? Don't worry about what conversations are being had about you. Come from that place of confidence. And I think that ends up being sometimes for women in particular, we are wondering what other people think and then wondering about the side conversations that are happening. And that can lead to that hidden leadership, that imposter syndrome feeling, whether or not we're even in front of people that have authority. So,
right.
It's like not necessarily an ongoing battle, because I'm hoping it's a few steps forward. Maybe you cycle back, but you're continually making progress in terms of understanding yourself and the energy and, being proud of your accomplishments. Tell us a little bit about that piece of recognizing your accomplishments. What can that do for women in particular to help us work through maybe that feeling of imposter syndrome, or help us to be more confident from that place of authenticity?
Yeah. 3 things I want to say. One is people are always going to talk about you. Right. This is why I say don't worry about it, right? Because people always talk. And not everyone's going to like you. You're not a jar of Nutella or a bottle of tequila. You know what I mean? So not everybody's going to like you either. You just got to get used to it. And that's been a lifelong learning lesson for me, because I've always felt like I can be anybody's friend. There's some people I don't want their friendship.
True.
Like some people you don't want to be connected with that coworker. In terms of accomplishments, I think a couple of things. Now, imposter syndrome, the way we talk about it, and I do this too. I use syndrome for SEO, to be quite honest with you. It's not a syndrome, because a syndrome is a medical diagnosis.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
It's an imposter moment. And that's the thing we want to remember, is that moment when we feel like we want to hide. That's your amygdala. That's the reptilian part of your brain just protecting you. Right. And in that moment, I don't care how accomplished you are, all that's out the window. You revert back to that. For me, it's the sad little 6-year-old with 3-inch thick glasses and a leg brace on one leg and, an overbite kind of thing, right? Like you're just like, I'm not mutton-legged brace. Blah, blah. It happens. We remember this is a moment. Okay. Now, there's a couple ways that we can think about our accomplishments. And I think it's important for us to own our accomplishments, because too often we avoid talking about ourselves because that isn't humility, or it's not humble, or we don't want to sound braggadocious. Except we've got to learn to tout our own value, because nobody else will. And men are very good at this, because they're taught to compete from an early age. We're not. We're taught to be nice. We're taught to play fair, all those kinds of things. Make yourself a brag book, just like you would for your kiddo, or just like you would, I've never had my own kids, but I've always heard about these baby brag books, right? Make one for yourself. Second thing is get yourself a posse. And what I mean by that is you got some sisters or brothers, whoever, maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your husband, to remind you who the hell you are when your head has popped off.
Yeah.
Don't you remember you've done this, 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 and this? As far as I can tell, you've always come out. I mean, really, if I look at my life, I've had a lot of failures, like things that have failed, things I've attempted and failed.
Yeah.
I had to break apart. That doesn't make me a failure. And the truth is, anytime I have felt that way, whatever's come out the other side of that needle, because it feels like you're squeezing yourself through the eye of the needle and it frickin' hurts, when you're out on the other side, you're like, oh my God, whatever that was, it's so much better now. I'm so glad I went through that fire.
Yes.
So make yourself a brag book. Start talking about your value because other people aren't going to. Do not wait to be recognized. Closed mouths don't get fed. If you want that promotion, if you want to take on that leadership, tell somebody. I have a really good example, someone who's in my program right now. This woman would never, ever ask for more fill in the blank. She is a team lead in a big tech company. Happy, said to me, I'm satisfied. I'm going to be retiring from here. I don't want to be promoted, yada, yada, yada. She gets in the program with me and she comes back one day and she goes, tells everybody, I had this conversation with my boss's boss. I was like, really? She goes, yeah, you told me it was okay to talk to my skip level leader. And I said, well, sure. You could walk in and tell me about your job. Not that I want it, but whatever it is. She goes, I told him I wanted more responsibility. And he kind of looked at me with big eyes and said, okay. And 2 weeks later, he pulled me in and he pulled me into his office and said, look, this team lead and this project, I had to remove them. I'd like to put you in there. What do you think? Had a big, long conversation. And her response was, great, but I want to bring my boss in here. Brings the boss in. The two guys start going at it, right? And my client raises her hand and says, let me know when it's my turn to talk. She never would have said that before, but she was being funny because she wasn't taking anything personally. Yeah. Her boss she could hear he wasn't trying to keep her down. He was trying to make sure she could get the work she was already assigned done. Right. Which makes sense. The big boss goes, quit being her lawyer.
Wow.
And now she has this high profile project that she's working on that she never would have asked for before being in this program with me, because you're not going to, if you don't talk about your value, nobody else will. If you don't ask for what you want or let people know you're interested, people aren't going to know. Right. They're going to go to people who have told them they're interested. And 9 times out of 10, men will look at a job posting or something, have 20, 30% and apply for it. Women, whatever reason, we feel like we need to match 100% or we won't go for it.
Yeah. I like how how she approached that and how you coached her through that makes a lot of sense. Cause I was one of those people where I would unfortunately sort of minimize my accomplishments. Like, oh, it was, thank you. And I'd move on. Or, I did a lot of building the team up, which was great. But then in the process, I kind of neglected any sort of management oversight that I had of the team. Teeing it up as, hey, I'm interested in taking on more responsibility, or I'm interested in this. And then it creates more, it seems to me like an easier path to say, well, here's why I'm qualified to do this additional responsibility or take on more or what have you, versus just feeling like you're out there.
Just say thank you.
Yeah.
Because again, as women, we are focused on interdependence, team, collaboration. It's a beautiful thing, but also understand that team needs a leader.
Right.
So if someone's coming to you and saying, great job, thank you so much.
That's simple. Take note, ladies.
Full
and
stop.
Gents, that's a great message for anyone, to be totally honest, but women in particular.
Women, yeah, for anybody. And this is I always have these little phrases that I use. And how often, oh, thank you so much, but you, right? I equate it this way. Let's say I'm having you over to my house for dinner, right? Or you asked me over for dinner and I don't know, I'm the person who brings my boyfriend yells at me all the time. He's like, you don't need to bring anything else. I'm like, I'm not showing up to the house empty handed. She gets a plant because it's spring and bottle of wine for just her that I know she liked. We have this fight every time we go any place that we're invited. And I say that if I were to come to your house with those things and you greet me and you say, this is what it's like when someone gives you a compliment, and you say, no, but to the other person, I'm coming to your house with these gifts. You look at me and you look at Jeremy, my boyfriend, you go, you guys can come in, but leave that crap outside the door.
Right.
You're giving the gift back. Because when somebody acknowledges you, they're acknowledging something they see in you that they're inspired by. And we can only be inspired by that which we find inspiring within. So we're seeing a reflection. Yeah. So accept the gift.
That's a great analogy. And yeah, receive it and yeah, be gracious and accept it. I love that. That's so many great nuggets of wisdom and information, and helping all listeners and women especially understand how they can show up as the best version of themselves as a leader, and thinking through the different leadership, authentic, legacy, hidden, and I missed the second one. What was the inspirational leader? Yes. Yeah. So, and then you've got workshops, you've got a coaching program, you've got books. How can people, if they want to work with you, what's the best way to find you, to get in touch with you, to learn more about the great work that you're doing to help people flourish in the workplace?
Well, thank you. At jencoken.com, JENCOKEN.com, you'll see a tab that says coaching. And underneath there, you'll see my one-on-one. You'll see the group. They also can email me, jen@jencoken.com. I always offer a free 20-minute strategy call. If you want to talk about how we could potentially work together, we can see if it's a fit. If I'm not a fit, I probably know somebody that might be, because I don't cover everything to everyone. But my program itself, one-on-one, I'm anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 to work with somebody for 6 months. My coaching program is $5,000. It's an affordable way to get what I've been doing for decades into a container with other amazing women, to be able to build community and have a sisterhood to help you find your anchor, find your root, find your true north, inspire your team, and make the impact that you want to make.
I love that. What a wonderful value too. And so much healing occurs in community. So I love that you've got both. You've got the one-on-one, you've got the community experience. Jen, thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared with the Change Leader Insights community today. I'm so grateful for your time, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and continuing to learn from you. So thank you again for your time. And just, for those that are listening, reach out to Jen. Obviously, she's a wonderful human who knows a lot of things that can help us. So thanks again, Jen, for all that you're doing to just help women in the workplace be the best leader that they can be.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Take care.